Shrutismritipurananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashyakritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bhedu Vibhagine Vyomavat Pyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Gukarastva Andhakaro Vai Rukarastva Nivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we'll continue on with the verses of Gyanankusham. So last 3 classes left, including today, and then we would have completed the this very beautiful text, very useful text really for implementing our attitudes in life. So we're going to do verses number 16. We already by mistake did number 17 last week, so we'll do 16 and then 18 and 19. I think those 3 we will do today. But before we start with the verse number 16, I'd like to make a point about what Swami Maheshananji has pointed out, which is, I think, a very beautiful, very important point. So what he was saying was, what he is saying here on page number 111, I'll read it a little bit, but let me explain to you what the concept is. He's saying that our antakarana shuddhi, the purity of our mind, the way we need to become more mature, to be ready for the effectiveness of the Atma Vidya. So we know this very well by now, that really there are 2 things involved in gaining moksha. One is the right instruction, and the other one is to improve our eligibility to understand the instruction. These are the 2 things that we have to really work on. And you have to be the best judge as to which of the ones you need more work on. If you think you are, or you have already gained a certain amount of equanimity, shamadama, uparama, titiksha, samadhanam, you already have that. But there is something missing because someone has not told you exactly what the situation is. So then you have to work on prameya. Prameya means what needs to be known. But on the other hand, if you have the prameya, but you don't understand what the implications of the vakyas, the sentences is, then you have to work on why is it that I don't understand it. Because if we have shraddha towards it, then the vakyas have to be accepted as being true, and yet I don't see that, and so that means that I have to work on my antakarana shuddhi. So in terms of understanding the purity of the mind, the necessity for it, and so on, it's like learning a new language. This is the point that I think Swami Maheshanji makes so beautifully. I really appreciate that. It's the same process. And the process, if you look at learning a new language, is that in the beginning it looks very disjointed and difficult and disjointed in the sense that you are learning individual letters, and then somehow you do the letters, then you see the words, and the words don't seem to make any sense. The grammar is not there. Then the grammar comes and you begin to see the sense of the sentence, but the sense of the sentence is not familiar to you yet. And so every time you have to say what's an object, what's a subject, what's a verb. You have to string it together, and then after a while, it becomes sort of like second nature, and you begin to use words and ideas without really thinking about them. So this is where the last stage is, where the language becomes very familiar to you. So learning the language of Atma Vidya, of self-knowledge, is really like that, believe it or not. Because we are learning bits and pieces of it and trying to string them together, and some of it actually begins to make sense. But we don't have the facility of internalizing it to a point where our thoughts, our actions, our behavior, all is consistent with this. So this we will spend more time on at some more time. But in terms of the point that he is making here, it's a very interesting one. So this Gyanankusham is intended for Antakarana Shuddhi. Because it is meant for people who know what Vedanta is. It is not really meant for, if you teach these verses to someone that hasn't had an introduction to Vedanta, they will laugh at it. Absolutely not. They are justified in laughing at it. If you say something like, but we did this very extreme case that why was I even born? Because I am creating a problem for others just by being there. It's the if there is an accident, then it would have been better if you were not there. But because you are there, there was an accident. And so you have to sort of see the bigger picture. And in seeing the bigger picture, so this is the point that please follow this part of it. In seeing the bigger picture, it looks laughable at first. Laughable at first. See, I'm supposing, I'm just making it up in terms of the event. Supposing there is a road accident, and you are not responsible for it, and somebody else actually did that. So a normal reaction would be, my gosh, that guy wasn't looking. He created such problems for me. I cannot believe this. Normal reaction. Okay? And it would be the normal reaction to someone who is new to the Vedantic language. See, this is the point we're making. It will be the same reaction if you and I have been studying Vedanta for a while, but not for a while, but we have been studying, but it's still new to us. So we will just be very justified in just being upset that, how come this guy didn't see. This is exactly what happened to me about 6 months ago. I think I mentioned to you that somebody backed into me. And I must say that I must congratulate myself that my attitude really changed. I was not interested in blaming anyone. I think, the guy was saying, you were here, I says, doesn't matter. Okay? Give me your insurance card, insurance information, and we'll deal with it. It did not really occupy although I had to go through a lot of time to get my cars repaired, this, that, or the other, but that feeling of being upset and anger was not there. I was very proud of myself, honestly. I said, wow, something is working. So in the beginning, when you have some event that upsets, because this whole Gyanankusham really, so beautifully, as we will continue that today also, is all about events that upset you. People that upset you, attitudes that upset you. And the matter of that upset is that it holds you from really, the Antakurna Shuddhi is not there, so it holds you from making progress on Atma Vidya. You get involved with disputes and your reactions about yourself, you don't like yourself, or why did I do this, why did that person, all those kinds of things. You're just preoccupied by doing that. Instead of just saying, you know what, let it go. My main goal is to really understand what's going on. But that attitude is impeded by your not knowing the language. Okay, so here's the upshot of this, and I will wrap this up, and this is an important point. When you first learn about these concepts, they look very alien to you. And they should. The fact that why was I even born? I am to blame for it. Oh my gosh, that's a very alien concept. People will say, what the? But the more you think about it, the more natural your attitudes become towards things that upset you. This is like you're getting more facility in learning the new language. So this is what is called developing a samskara. Samskara. So I think another example would be that in any kind of a society situation, including family situations and so on, there are people who always bug you. Okay, they will. Whether it's your spouses, your children, your friends, your neighbors, whatever it is, and they're always saying things to you that you don't agree with. You think that they're wrong. And so at first you try to become self-righteous, that these are wrong, the wrong things. I am not like that. So you're really blaming somebody else to do that. But slowly, as you learn the language of Gyanankusham, you begin to develop an attitude, let it go. Who's to blame, who is not to blame, it doesn't really matter. And at first, your mind says, what? Why are you letting it go? You're justified in getting upset. So you have to really tell your mind, okay, I know. You know what? I have a larger thing in mind. Let it go. Just go. And at first your mind means yourself. You will protest that I don't know if this should be we need to really be protective of ourselves and all those kinds of things. But Swami Maheshananji says what happens is that slowly, your mind develops a habit of not getting upset. This is when you have learnt the language, facility of the language becomes natural. Your mind starts to upset, drops down and says, this guy is not going to let me do that. It goes away. So this is what we need to do, is that even though many of these concepts look rather strange and alien to us at first blush, but if we continue with the truth about it, because they're not saying something which is not true, and also not only not true, but it is meant for your own good. You see, that's the thing. You have to look at what is best for me. What is best for you is praptasya praptihi. Already something which is you have, and you're discarding it because you're too busy in all these trivial things. So here, I'll read a small part of this, and then this is the general part, and then we will go back to the specific verse number 16. Okay? So he says, I'll do that in Hindi first. He says, साधक को इस प्रकार से विचार करना है. So a person who is a sadhaka means one who's a student of Vedanta, one who is a student of one's own good. You know, we should stop saying student of Vedanta as though this is a class and so on and so forth. We should be a student of what is really good for me. Atma Vichara is good for me. So that is a sadhaka. So he says, साधक को इस प्रकार से विचार करना है. So a student of self-knowledge has to think about it this way. Then he says, बार बार विचार करने से ही संस्कार बढ़ेगा. This is the key sentence. And this encapsulates the thing about learning a new language, practicing it, and so on. It's just very interesting. I was talking to my oldest granddaughter, Arya, who was very kind enough to have dinner with us the other day. They're so busy that they don't have any time, and it's nice to spend a time with a single person. Sometimes we have the whole family and there is a different dynamic. The parents are interfering and the younger sister and so on. So my wife and I were very nice to have Arya just for ourselves for dinner a couple of nights ago. And so we had gone to a new restaurant in Los Altos called El Alto. And we didn't know because we don't know Spanish. So we were asking her, Arya, because she has taken some language lessons in Spanish. What does it mean? So she was explaining it to me, and one time she had to Google it to see the implications of it and so on. And then she says that I have to appear in an exam. There's like 256 words that I have to be very familiar with. And in fact, it might be today or tomorrow. This week she has the final exams. She's a sophomore at a high school. And then next month, she's going to Costa Rica for some social work, which her mother also had done in her time, and they all have a value for doing that. So she's going to spend 3 to 4 weeks in Costa Rica. And we were saying, by the time you come back, you will not have to look up these words in the dictionary. You will be speaking fluently because all the talk is in Spanish. There's no English spoken there. So she's going to progress it. It'll be interesting. I want to touch bases with her in a month or two from now and see how she does. So here Swami Maheshananji says, बार बार विचार करने से ही संस्कार बनेगा. The thing we have to do is to build up the samskaras. Samskara of doesn't matter. Let it go. Overlook it. You look at Parameshwara and his vast world, and you ignore any pratibandhakas, any obstacles. Just ignore them. Seek the Lord, seek Ishvara, seek God all the time. You cannot do that if you get involved in small things here and there. That's called samskara. So right now he says, right now अर्थशास्त्र, नीति शास्त्र, व्यवहार शास्त्र के जो हमें संस्कार बहुतेरे हैं और अन्य लोग भी शिक्षाएं देते रहते हैं, पर अध्यात्म शिक्षा हम नवीन ग्रहण कर रहे हैं। इसके संस्कार अभी बहुत कम हैं और इन्हें उपोदित करने वाली साथी भी दुर्लभ हैं। अतः हमें भी पुनरावृत्ति से इनके संस्कारों को दृढ़ करना होगा। Lovely points. He says, it is kind of like, if you want to learn Spanish or any other new language, you need to use it. You need to find other people that also know it. You need to communicate with them. You have to practice. This is what it is. It's a new language. And we don't find these people. He says, जो इनको उपोद्धलित करने वाले, I'm not sure the exact meaning of upoddhalit, but I can tell one who really makes it stronger, I think. जो साथी हैं वो भी दुर्लभ हैं, means they are very hard to find. People to speak language is very hard to find. If she goes to Costa Rica, then it will be wonderful. But until here, then nobody knows Spanish, and she stumbles, others stumble. So this is the general point. Please, we need to get the practice of self-purity. Self-purity means, this is the thing. Swami Dayanand used to say that if you want the absolute value of something, you must at least develop relative value for that. You know that famous sentence that I have often said is, I love humanity, but I can't stand people around here. This is the situation. This is how our mind works. Hey, if you love humanity, where is that humanity that you love? There's some kind of a romantic idea about humanity. Hey, people are humanity. No, I hate the people. I cannot stand them. But I love humanity. This is called moha and shoka. This is exactly what the situation Gita says, is that you are full of it. And so what you need to do is that before you become totally tolerant of the things happening in your life and so on, you have to practice being tolerant at a relative level first. As we saw in the last class also, it's just like saying that I want to be a wrestler, but I don't want to fight with real people until the time when I have to test wrestling. You won't even be allowed close to it, because then I know somebody will just give you one thappad and you're gone. That's not the way to practice. You have to start at small levels and then grow up and become stronger. So this is overall the sense of Gyanankusham, that these individually and collectively, these ideas that we are going through should seep into you, so that it becomes natural, and you don't have to tell your mind, now just be shut up, don't react. It won't react naturally. Okay, so that's the general background. I thought that we'll spend a few minutes doing that. So now go to verse number 16 and 18 and 19. I think I'll try to finish all three of them. All these are very remarkable and interesting, and they're very profound. See, these ideas are not just not come up with some local author who just wants to become popular and it becomes the bestseller list in New York Times. No, These are profound ideas that have been given by Mahatmas over thousands of years of practice. And the same thing in all societies. Same thing was there in 2000 years ago as it is now. Very profound. So here he says, number 16, in Hindi, मेरे प्रति अपराध करने अगर ये सुखी हो रहा है तो मुझ पर इसका अनुग्रह ही है. दुख सागर में लगातार दुख से संतप्त ये बेचारा मेरे निमित्त कुछ आराम पा रहा है, इसमें अनुग्रहित हूं मैं. He says, by getting mad at me and criticizing me, a person is gaining a little bit of self-satisfaction. That's what happens. If somebody just says something really bad to you, one of two things that can happen. Somebody criticizes you. I think you are that's the most ridiculous thing you did. I don't expect that from you. And this is not right. And you're so old now and you're still behaving like this. Things like that. People say this all the time. Okay? So when somebody says that, what is your reaction? There can be one of two reactions. One is that you say, no, I'm not wrong. You are wrong. I did the right thing. You didn't understand what I was trying to do. This is one thing. The other one is you can say is, you're right. You're right. I didn't think about that. I'm sorry. Well, let's take the latter case first. The first case, you're just escalating it and there's no easy resolution to it. But even take the second case. Second case is you say, you know what, inside you just don't feel that inside you felt you were justified. But let the other person have the satisfaction. So you say, you know what, you're right. I didn't think about it. It was really my mistake. You know what the other person will feel? They'll have a smile on their face, a sense of self-satisfaction. I was right. This guy has admitted that he was wrong. Good. So Swamiji says, by doing this, by criticizing you, someone gets a little bit of sukham. And who gets the sukham? He says the whole life is full of dukkha. Dukkha. We are just bad accountants. We forget about dukkha. We only count some sukha. And then you ask someone, how's your life? It's okay. It's not okay. There's problems from morning to evening. If you were to write it down, you write down all of your dukkha on the left-hand side and the sukha on the right-hand side. Be very accurate about it. Every time there is something bad happens, you do it on the left-hand side. Anything something good happens on the right-hand side. You will see the right-hand side has got 4 or 5 lines. The left-hand side, you need another page. This is what life is all about, really, whether we admit it or not. And from morning to evening, it's nothing but worry and concern and regrets and all kinds of issues and so on. So Swamiji says, this is like you are in what is called Bhavasagara. Bhavasagara means, first of all, the Sagara is the epithet for ocean. And why they say the life is a Bhavasagara means that it is continuously happening. And it is happening without any ends. You see, if it's a lake or a river, then you can jump out of it. But that doesn't happen in our life. One day follows another day, and you think that this will all get end on the third day? No. No. Maybe it'll end at death. No. This will just go on forever. So you are in an ocean, you cannot get out at all. Okay? Alright, so that's the situation. Now look at the example that Swami Mahesharanji gives. He says, suppose where does it say that? Just a second. I wonder if it is, I'm doing two things. One second. Yeah, that is a separate example. Okay. Sorry. I'm going to wait. That example can apply here also, but I'm going to wait until the next one. So, the Bhavasagar is the same. So it is full of dukkha. Now, he says that once in a while, if someone does something good, then they get a small portion of sukham. It's surrounded by dukkham, but you get some small islands, as though it is no island in the ocean, but some kind of a small relief for a while. That happens. Okay? And so I am so committed to fighting it out in my life with all the problems that I don't think about getting out at all. Don't think about it. I am just, Swamiji says, it's like hanging a tapasvi, somebody who's a Mahatma in dukkha. Because I have no choice about it at all. Actually, I have a choice, but I am not brave enough to exercise it. He gives this very beautiful example. He says that in the South India, there was a Mahatma called Sadashiva Brahmendra. I don't know about him, but possibly he is well known. We can even Google the person. His name was Sadashiva Brahmendra. Okay. So the story goes, not the story, it's a real life. He was about 12 or 13 years old when his family started to make preparations for him getting married. Yeah, in those days, even now, especially with girls, they get married off very early. Very early. Even they don't even reach puberty. And so in those days, even the young boys would get married. Okay? So this is what happens so in this case, he was 12 or 13 years old. And so his family started to arrange for a marriage. And there were usually what happens is you have some friends that have a daughter, and the friends all come together, they hug each other and say, let's get our kids married. Okay, done, wonderful, great. We both live in the same village, it's so wonderful, we'll all be together, our children, grandchildren, done. So this boy wanted to have his lunch. And so he told his mother, Mom, can I have my lunch? So she said, son, can you please wait a little bit today because it's not quite ready yet. So he says, okay, fine. So after half hour, 45 minutes, he's really hungry. And he says, Mom, I really want my lunch. And the mom says, not yet. And I'll tell you what, there are some people coming to look at you, and we are going to have a sumptuous lunch when they are here, and then we will enjoy it. So please wait. You know what this boy did? He went to his room. This is the actual story. And he thought to himself, if I am going to suffer by hunger, even before the marriage has not even taken place, then I can imagine that what will I go through after the marriage takes place. And this is what is called a wise person from his previous samskaras of life, like Ramana Maharshi and others, so many others. There's this Gujarati Maharaj who, I forget his name, but he also, just hundreds of people do this. Do you know what he did? He collected his clothes in his little box, and he left the home never to come back. He had that much conviction. And he became one of the greatest Mahatmas of his time because of his Vairagya. But this is a story of exceptions rather than the rule. The rule is, many times when we are growing up, we also feel, I remember this happened to me. I'm sure with many of you, we are dragged into things. I wanted to just be by myself. No, you have to attend this marriage. And the marriage was there people walking, talking, and there was all these filmy songs from Lata Mangeshkar and so on, noisy. Food was not available and so on. Then you say, okay, now I'm back. Another month goes back. Another marriage, another something. You have to go there. And I remember, what is this whole life? There must be something better than that. I mean, my Vairagya also started pretty early. I couldn't do anything about it. I was dragged. Finally, I tell you, this is Bhagwan was looking at for me. He created such physical problems for me. I was so sick of the dust and so on. Traveling in trains was just terrible for me. Everybody else was happy, but I was coughing away and so on. I decided I'm not going to even stay here. And when the opportunity came, I just left India. But really what happened to me was, it wasn't until when I left India that I began to think independently. Started to read. No more influences from anyone else, on my own. And Ishvara was very kind to me to give me the right teachers. So the thing is that we get dragged into this life. This is the point he's making. He says we are stuck in this ocean of dukkha all life long. And if somebody obtains some level of sukha, then I should just let them enjoy it and just be by themselves. That's okay. And say, okay, all right, I'm not going to react, you be happy. Because I know what your life is. This is what the life of most of us. It's full of dukkha. And if you have a little lesha, little sense of sukham, enjoy it. So I tell you, you can practice this. Next time if somebody says something and you say, well, at least makes you happy, it's okay. All right. You don't have to say anything. No, that will inflame the person even more. Don't say that, but internally you say, it's okay, let it go. Anyway, so there's some more things to talk about, but I think that thing about the samskara was included in this verse, and that is a significant one. That you have to develop samskara for the right kind of thinking. Samskara means vasana or samskara. The word samskara is a positive one. Vasana sometimes can be negative. You have to develop a facility of the language. So you see, when we use words, it's because of my memory that my words I have learned before, they come to me right away. How I should speak, what words I should use, what grammar I should use. This is the samskara of the language. This is what we have to develop. Okay, that's 16. How are we doing with time? 8:40. Okay. Let's now jump to 18. 17 we already did last week. So the 18 is similar, but with some small differences. He says in Hindi, शरीर ढाके बिना समुद्र में कूदा व्यक्ति जैसे ये नहीं चाहता कि जल से भीगूं, वैसे ही संसार सागर में पड़ा व्यक्ति चाहे संसार प्रयुक्त दुख मुझे न हो, ये तो असंगत बात है. ब्यूटीफुल. शरीर ढाके बिना समुद्र में कूदा व्यक्ति जैसे ये नहीं चाह सकता कि जल से भीगूं ही नहीं, वैसे ही संसार सागर में पड़ा व्यक्ति चाहे संसार प्रयुक्त दुख मुझे ना हो, ये तो असंगत बात है. He says, imagine the situation. Situation is, you take off your clothes completely, you become naked, and you jump into the ocean without any wetsuit, without any insulating material. Directly you go into the cold ocean, naked in your body. Okay? And having jumped into the ocean naked, then to say, I hope I don't get wet. I hope I don't get wet. Isn't that a ridiculous expectation? Totally idiotic. Similarly, however you may start it, that's a different thing altogether. The moment you take birth in this life as a human being, you have jumped into the same Bhavasagar that we talked about in the verse number 16. The same ocean of dukkha, 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 which has no end to it. If there is a small amount of sukham, that is just to keep going, and keep going endlessly, right to the end of the life, starting all over again. There's absolutely no respite from it. And you are naked in the sense, you have no insulation. A small amount of things can just upset you. Somebody can shoot you in a second. There can be an earthquake, and even if there's no earthquake, there's no shooting, everything is okay, then people say things to you that make you very unhappy instantly. They insult you. And in the moment you are, for a small amount of time, you are just sitting there eating and you feel good and so on, back again to the same thing. This is the situation. You are actually in Bhavasagara. Swami Dayanand used to say, Bhavasagar me sukh. Wasn't that beautiful? What does he say? Mori lagi lagan guru sharanan ki Bhavasagar sab sukh gaya hai fikr nahi mujhe तरनन की फिक्र नहीं मुझे तरनन की मीरा के प्रभु गिरधर नागर something मोरी लागी लगन गुरु Sharanan ki. This is a song that he used to sing, very famous. The Bhavasagar sab sukh gaya means that through this teaching, all of a sudden, the whole ocean that I could not feel like I could get out of it is already dry. Exactly what happens when the dream ends. In the dream, you are just going on and on and on and on. Gone. And same thing will happen once you have a direct vision of Ishvara as nothing but yourself alone, which will just take some time, but that will wake you up. Until then, you are in the Bhavasagara, as this one says. And as long as you're in the Bhavasagara, how justified you are in saying, I don't want Bhavasagar to touch me. Just like a naked person is idiotic in expecting the water not to touch his body, similarly, a jiva who is knee deep, body deep into this samsara, which is full of nothing but dukkha, 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 dukkha. And to say that I don't want anybody to upset me. It's just like saying I don't want water to touch me. I don't want this samsara to even touch me. Hey, you are in it. What are you talking about not touching you? No possibility of that except that you wake up from it. So he says, let's see what some of the details that he's talked about. So asangat ichha means ridiculous desire. Asangat. Sangat means doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? Just like a person without clothes, even if you have clothes, to say that I don't want the ocean to wet me is nonsensical. Only a mad person would say that. And yet we are exactly the same way. I don't want the samsara to really upset me. I don't want to be. Hey, you are in it. You decided to go into it. Whatever the reason is, that's a separate issue. But you are in it. And other than the fact that you have to go beyond the adhyatmika and go beyond the vyavaharika into paramarthika, there is no other way to do that. So stop complaining about it, because it's very natural. What is natural is going to happen. He says that it's just like, you have a body and you feel that I should never get sick. if you have a body, it is natural that you will be sick. If you do not get sickness, you are absolute exception. There are people who never go to the hospital and they suddenly die. There's probably just amazingly small number. Not possible. Then similarly, you have a mind and you feel that I should not be sad. Not possible. It's just like saying you are in the ocean and you don't want the water to touch you. It's exactly the same situation. Ridiculous expectation. And he says that if you really look at it, it's such a prescient example. He says if you look at it, the conflicts and the problems of the world are increasing. They are not getting better. I mean, it's so sad. We were just discussing it with my wife and I and with other people that it's not as though people don't get mad. Not as though this guy, this 18-year-old guy that killed 21 people, and so it all starts by being insulted, and so you other people who are really hard on you when you're growing up, and so on, and so you just want to bring it all out in some fashion. So this has been going on for thousands of years. There are people, you go to schools and there are fights and all of that just happens all the time. But guess what? You fight with your hands and you at the worst knock somebody's teeth down and you're suspended from school for a week and so on. And you get bloodied somebody's nose, that's the worst that used to happen. But now, with the gun culture that we have in this country, and gun sales are increasing. They're not decreasing. The same amount of emotional upheaval that occurs naturally amongst people and gets resolved gets into a big thing. And by the way, the same thing is happening in India. This gangster wars in Punjab, it's getting worse. And so there's no end to this kind of a conflict, except turning your back into it. But, that's what's happening in this world. So anyway, the Gyanankusham is that living in this samsara, I am not privy to being not affected by it. That is a very natural thing that has happened. And I would say that it's a question of expectations more than the actual happenings. They're going to happen, but my expectation is, this is the thing that he was talking about, the naked guy going into the ocean, that expectation is that I should not get wet. That's where the problem occurs. My expectation is that nobody should bother me. I'm not bothering anyone, so no one should bother me. Hey, it's a good thing you're not bothering anybody. But the real thing, as we talked about in the last couple of weeks, is it is not the absence of Dvaita, but despite Dvaita. That is the Advaita. that for you to even see that this is a botheration is something to think about. So that's what he was talking about in this whole number 80. Okay, let's go to the last one, and we may be done early again because I just had time to look over the notes of the three of them. And so this is number 19. So we will have 2 more classes of 3 each, and then we are done. So this is something which we have done before, but some slightly new version of that. Hindi. अगर विरोधी लोग न हों तो क्षमा का अभ्यास कैसे होगा? जिसके निमित्त से मुझे क्षमा का फल चित्त शोधन मिल रहा है, वो समस्त पूजाओं के ही योग्य है. अगर विरोधी लोग न हो तो क्षमा का अभ्यास कैसे होगा? अभ्यास कैसे होगा? नॉट अभ्यास बट अभ्यास कैसे होगा? जिसके निमित्त से मुझे क्षमा का फल चित्त शोधन मिल रहा है, वो तो समस्त पूजाओं के ही योग्य हैं. So, this particular verse is all about Shama, which is, the normal translation of Shama is forgiveness. And it is forgiveness. But the real meaning of Kshama is not forceful forgiveness, but overlooking it. There's a slight difference. And actually, the same thing that we talked about earlier in terms of the stages of learning a new language. In the beginning, Kshama really does mean forceful forgiveness. But then if you get used to it, you set a higher standard of your own thinking. You're not upset by trivial things. Then you have to not be upset with something which is bigger than trivial things, to a point where you're not upset at all. You overlook it. I can tell you this is what I'm practicing, and it's working for me. That what used to bother me at that point no longer bothers me. Because I've realized this is not helpful to me to be bothered. Let it be. You overlook it. It's all right. That happens. So, he says, in the sannyasis, Kshama is considered to be one of the desired qualities of a sannyasi. So in fact, I'm not a sannyasi, so I never was given these instructions, but Swamiji used to talk about it. So when the Diksha is given and you are made into a Swami or a Swamini, then some minimum things are taught to you, and you're expected to follow those minimum guidelines. And one of them is Kshama, forgiveness. That you don't expect things from people, and if there is some transgression and so on, you just let it go. Don't react back to it. This is one of those. Another one just on that score is a lack of competition. So that is the reason why you don't work for anything. You don't say, I'm teaching this class and I need $100 from you. and that is not the right thing. If we have to have some classes and we need to have a classroom, then of course you will appreciate that there is some donation required. But I don't expect anything. I shouldn't expect anything. And if I'm I'm not even a sannyasi, I'm a householder. But if you're a sannyasi, you don't work for anything, for a living. Whatever is given to you, that's all there is. There's no sense of competition. Competition means that that I want that money, you don't get that money. Here, whatever is extra, if you can just keep me alive, I would appreciate it. But you don't even have to keep me alive. God will somehow or the other will let me go, and after a while I don't need anything. So those are some of the qualities of a sannyasi. But one of them is kshama. So here, supposing you are doing Atma Chintanam, you are thinking about self-knowledge. So what is a very, very famous verse? What is it? Tat Chintanam. So this is called Brahma Abhyasa. So Brahma Abhyasa means the practice of thinking about Brahman, yourself. So one of the first one is Tat Chintanam. Tat here means Brahman. So Tat Tvamasi. So that's Tat means that. That refers to who you consider to be separate from you, who's not. But in the beginning it is that. That becomes you. It does not even become this. It becomes you later on. But in the beginning it is that. So Tat Chintanam means the Atma Chintanam. Thinking about the Atma. Thinking about what is the reality of myself. What is the reality of Parameshvara. All of those kinds of things. So supposing you are doing that, and supposing somebody gives you're busy thinking, you're just studying, you don't have time to cook, but the body gets hungry. So if someone does the kripa on you by giving you food so that you can continue to do Atma Chintanam, are you not thanking that person? You are. So this is what is called Abhyasa. Abhyasa means learning a language. That's what Abhyasa is. Any learning a new language, there is a lot of work required. You have to learn grammar, you have to learn vocabulary and good senses and all kinds of things, tenses, everything you have to do, and it takes a lot of effort to do. So this is what is called Brahma Chintanam. It's a new language. We have to think about it. It's called Adhyatma Vidya. And so there is some chintanam required, some effort required, some abhyasa required. And in that abhyasa, supposing somebody feeds you food which you need to do abhyasa, then are you not thanking that person? So here also, if someone does something bad to you, says something bad to you, is that not creating an opportunity for doing abhyasa for forgiveness? Should you not be getting used to forgiveness? Is every new event in your life taken as something which is upsetting? and you have to deal with it. No. You classify them, oh, here comes another person who upsets me. I know how to deal with it. Go on, let go. Not Guru. Next. Here comes another person with another situation that really potentially upsets me. It's okay, doesn't matter. Next. So the abhyasa is something which is, you have to think about it. Exactly, the same example on this wrestler. If you would declare to everybody that I want to be the champion wrestler, or you're, any kind of a sport, fencing. Supposing you are learning fencing. In fact, it was interesting, one of the daughters of a friend of ours, or granddaughter maybe, became a fencing champion recently. Amazing. Indian girl. So supposing you have this thing about becoming the fencing champion. Are you not going to ask people to play with you so that your fencing gets better? Of course you are. This is called abhyasa. You have to practice. Similarly, if nobody upsets you, everybody is very nice to you, your sense of forgiveness is not getting a chance to do some abhyasa, some practice. This is a beautiful point really throughout all of this. So he says, this is an important thing. So he says in Hindi, if the people who are, not in Hindi but the translation of Hindi, if the people who are opposed to you don't express themselves, then where is the chance for you to practice your forgiveness? And so you should, just like you want to thank people who are giving you food while you're doing Atma Chintanam, and you say thank you for your bhiksha. And so people that live in the ashrams, this is a very beautiful thing. I've seen them when I was in Rishikesh. There are swamis and brahmacharis living there. And then there is a bell for breakfast. And all they have to do is to come out of their rooms and sit down, have their breakfast. And then at most they may be asked to wash their dishes, but even that is sometimes not necessary. And then they go back to their rooms to study, to teach or to study. Lunchtime they come out, they do some prayers, they have their lunch, and same again, they are continuing their study. So is it not a feeling of thankfulness to the whole ashram for not really, they don't have to cook, they don't have to spend time cooking, everything is really provided for them, and so they can continue to do abhyasa for Atma Chintanam. So similarly, if somebody gives you the opportunity to forgive them by trying to upset you, it's exactly the same situation because you're saying thank you. I'm not there yet. I got a little upset, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. I failed this time. I was not able to forgive you, but I will try to do it next time. Is it not the same thing? Why are you not recognizing that this is an attempt by Ishvara to test your forbearance, your patience, your sense of forgiveness? So this is the sense of this particular number 19. So with that, I'll close the class. I think we'll have a few more to discuss, but you now get a general idea of what Gyanankusham is about and how it really helps us to improve ourselves in owning up to something that I already have, but I fail to recognize. That's all. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. This is the good to see you all. Wonderful. Balamaniji says, in order to cross samsara ocean, is learning Vedanta, trying to practice is enough, or surrender to Ishvara also in addition to Vedantic knowledge and practice? So yeah, you have to surrender to Ishvara. We'll talk much more about that. So the surrendering to Ishvara is not separate from surrendering to knowledge or learning. It is really Ishvara's anugraha that we are given an introduction to this knowledge by the proper person. That is also comes from Ishvara. Having said all that, one important thing to keep in mind at this point, because this needs a lot of introduction, a lot of explanation, and this is really one of the main topics of Bhagavad Gita. And I have to just tell you that I am really thinking of making the Bhagavad Gita study from beginning to end with the help of Swami Shankarananda's commentary. One of the things that I think I'm going to do. I haven't made up my mind yet. I've got to go. I've been going through your surveys. I have about half a dozen things that I'm thinking of doing, not just teaching classes, but other things. And I'm withholding my decision until I meet with Swami Viditatmananda ji in about a month's time, 3 weeks' time. And I hope to have some in-depth discussion with him. But it's trending like I would like to teach the Bhagavad Gita with Swami Shankarananda's commentary. And the reason I'm mentioning that is that if you look at it, because I study it every day, now I'm in the 12th chapter, which is my second time around, or maybe third time around. If you look at the commentaries of the Bhagavad Gita, this point that you asked for about the surrender to Ishvara is very much taken up. So let me just give you the gist of it at this point, and then we will go into it in much more detail as we study this further. It is not possible for the so-called jiva not to be able to lift outside of the samsara without Ishvara's anugraha. Not possible. The example given by Swami Maheshananji and many others as well is, it is exactly like you are in the middle of a swamp. In Hindi, we call daldal. The daldal you don't have any firm footing. You are just in the deep mud, and you don't have the ability to get outside of it. What you need to do is to have a person who is not in the daldal extend a stick or a rope to you so that you get pulled outside. You cannot do it yourself, no matter you say, I'm very strong. The stronger you are, the worse you will be. You have to surrender and get some lifeline. This is the situation. So what that really means is, in real terms, is that until we give up this firm sense of ahankara and really have it being completely enveloped by the sense of Ishvara, we are not going to be free. And also another thing is that in Vedanta, you are not going to be able to fool Ishvara. And we try to fool Ishvara many, many times. In my own life also, you declare victory too soon. Oh, I think I've done it now. Now I understand what it is, and I don't need to do anything. Wrong. There's much more to be done. And I sometimes give advice to people who say, we're done. We did this particular text, and now I think we feel good about it, and so on. Well, I hope you are, but you may be mistaken. Because there is a complete surrender required, and you cannot do it without Ishvara's anugraha. So the point I was making was that you will know when Ishvara has given you the ability to be completely free. And you cannot do it without his help. This is why all the spiritual and religious practices, including Buddhism and Jainism and Sankhya and Vaisheshika and so on, those who do not even entertain an Ishvara, in our view, they are flawed. You can just pretend that I am like this and so on, but pretension doesn't do anything. You cannot fool Ishvara. And so only when you fully deserve in dissolving your own ahankara, and Ishvara will say you're ready. So the answer to your inquiry is yes, but not in the way you put it. It's not as though learning Vedanta is separate, Ishvara is separate. It's all part of the same thing. But in the end, you have to wait for the anugraha of Ishvara to pull you out of it. All right. Keshav, yes, I think I knew that you were interested in it. So a number of people have written to me in this survey and saying that they would like to see. But I have to tell you that this treatment of Bhagavad Gita is going to be at a very advanced level. I'm going to actually take the Sanskrit common explanation of Swami Shankarananda, and so if you get impatient in at least listening to some of the Sanskrit, you won't enjoy it because it'll be at that kind of a level. It'll be teaching in English, and I will translate it as much as possible, but my beginning would be to read the text of Shankaranandaji's text, if we decide to do it. I'm not sure about it, but I'm leaning in that direction. Okay. All right. With that, I close this class, and there's 2 more to come. All right. Hari Om.